Hi everyone, this is Julie Bruns. Welcome to the Peace and Possibilities podcast. I want you to thrive and be happy, peaceful, and content, no matter where you are on your journey. This podcast shares stories that will show you how it can be done, no matter what your circumstances. You'll be inspired and come away with a new spark of an idea. Never forget, anything is possible. New episodes are released every Wednesday. Subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review. This helps others find our content and get happier sooner. To possibility and beyond. Okay, so welcome to this episode, you guys. This is a part 2 episode of the Peace and Possibilities podcast with Clifford Jones. And Cliff and I spoke a couple of months ago, maybe several weeks ago, but I just released part 2 this week. And I'm talking again with him because when we were talking on the phone last time via Zoom, you brought up we went down a few paths that I wasn't expecting. And I was like, that some of the things you were talking about were coming up in my life at the time too. So I thought, this is interesting. I want to hear more about that. So I listened again to our conversation the part 1 conversation, and I remember it was at the end of the conversation where you said some of the things that kind of spoke to me. And so I wanted to hear more about, number 1, because you mentioned how you went up and down with your businesses and how some were successful and weren't, and then you came back and now you're loving life and everything's going really well. How you've been married to the same woman for 35 years, I think you said. Her name was Janice. And then you raised 2 boys, men along the way. And I thought, I want to hear more about how you did that successfully. You married, sounds like you made a very good choice in a wife, which is obviously very, very important. And some of the lessons along the way with parenting and how you managed to be a good parent, have a thriving business and a marriage. I know they probably all weren't at the same level at the same time, if I'm guessing correctly, because I've been there too. But I wanted to talk more about how you managed to do all that in a way that leading you to a good, happy life now with the same person.
Okay. Well, Julie, thank you for having me back again. Pleasure to be with you. And I think what you're asking me is, how did I juggle it all and seemingly pull it off? Mm-hmm. And if we're talking about my family, so my priorities are what I call God, and then my family, and then my business. However, they're all very much aligned. I believe from a young age that it was possible to find work that was fulfilling. I had a job as a snowmaker, not fulfilling. I had a job as a highway construction guy, painter, you name it, right? We've all had those jobs. And we know what it feels like to get energy from our work or not. So the short answer is, Julie, the way I juggled it all, family, raising Christopher and Alexander, who were 29 and 31, very successful, was with Janice. We had a partnership that beyond explanation was based on mutual respect, deep, deep friendship. We met in college. We were married at 24. I mean, I was a very young 24, and she was always more mature, the go-to rock of our family. So I get emotional when I think about that, because there is no way I could have been an entrepreneur without Janice in my life. So the alternative, and I say this with all of the empathy in the world for people who struggle in their business, if I had not a Janice, a partner, I would have been in a van, down by the river, proverbial river, to be in business for myself. Or I would have, what I used to say is sell my soul and take a job where my soul would literally feel like it was dying. Mm. So it boils down to the unconditional love and the unity that my God was able to give me with the Janice. So now I'm crying a little bit. So
I love that. No, it's making me emotional too, because my husband and I were having a similar conversation. We were married at 26 as well. And we have been married 24 years now. And our boys are right now, they're 18 and 23. And we were talking about this too recently in the last couple of months. And he was saying, I know I would not be where I am now if I had met you and fell in love with you. And we met when I just turned 21 and he wasn't even 21 yet. He's a couple months younger than me. And when we met, I was going off to college, and he was like, what am I doing with my life? He's working 2 jobs, but there was definitely a connection. But even at that point where we both were like, who is this person? It wasn't the right time for us. Actually went and met someone else. I said to him, there's something here, but you're not ready for it. I just knew. I always dated older guys, and I said, you're not at the level I am, only in commitment wise, and there's other things you need to finish up with your life, with a girl, whatever. So let's just go our separate ways, and maybe when we come back together, if it's meant to be, we'll come back together. I'm a big believer in that. And he was like, he looked at me and said, you're right, I do care about you a lot, but you're right, I'm not ready for this now. And I said, well, I'm in a different point in my life. We need to say goodbye. And if it ends up happening, we broke up. I actually went and got engaged to someone else. And I thought I was marrying the right guy for me. And as soon as I said yes, I knew it was the wrong thing that I said. And 3 weeks later, I said, I ended it. As soon as I knew it was wrong, I got up the courage. I went back and I said, this is not right. This is not what I want. This is not we're not the right fit. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And then I went back to my husband, Brian, and I said, listen, this is like 1.5 years later. And I said, I met this guy. I don't want to marry him, but I think there's something there with us. And he was like, that kind of woke him up. And he's like, there is something there. And you're right. I don't want you to, I don't know what it is right now, but yes. And then that was the beginning of the rest of our life together. It was kind of funny, but we were saying that he was saying that if I hadn't come into his life, he would have been continuing down the other path, which was working in restaurants, being up late at night, not really having a career. He just would have probably survived. And like you said, worked out jobs to just have enough money to love life. And even though loving life is fun in the beginning, it's not stable, and it's not stable. It's not nurturing. It's not all of those things that a good marriage and a good family are. And he didn't know that he wanted all that. He just met me and was like, I want something with her. And that was it. So more than I want.
It's quite a learning experience. You've learned a lot. That's a great story. You guys been together how long? Married?
So that was 30 years ago when we met, and we've been married 24.
Good for you.
Yeah. So I couldn't agree more that picking the right person, and I talked to my boys about this too. It's like you can make a lot of things work in your life with the right attitude and the right resources and the right information. But if you pick the wrong person, your life, it's not going to be as great as it should be.
Yeah, I have great empathy for anybody who's trying to do live on their own. I find great joy in having a tight circle of family and friends, and fairly good-sized digital network that likes my articles and videos and our coaching stuff. And the thing for me, if I look back, I could say if I learned to trust the process earlier, I could have been content sooner. But I was always chomping at the bit, grinding at the next thing, wanted to make more money, wanted to save more money, and that drive based on a fear of failure, fear of not being able to feed the boys, fear of looking not responsible to my wife's family and friends. We had a lot of expectations. It goes against the grain for most of us to go out and put it all on the line and start a business. Mm-hmm. And I was just having a conversation with a young man who told me, a number of weeks ago, he wanted to be a business coach and he wanted to build his own practice. And he's in a remote part of America and does some coaching now with another company. And what has to happen is, I would say the vast majority of people who come to me and say they want to start a business, they won't go out and make contact and sell and market and invest and make and lose the money and go back to their spouse or look in the mirror and say, okay, I learned from that loss. How do I mitigate the loss? How do I keep moving forward? And the only way we do that, Julie, is by as Napoleon Hill said in Think and Grow Rich, major, definite purpose. And it's purpose that if we could just know our purpose is to feel energized and do work that makes us a good living, mm-hmm. and that it's not all about money, because we know from the great tragedies, I won't use any names, but I read this morning the daughter of a very wealthy, famous person on the West Coast, called it quits in life. And we see the consequences of not being able to master the inner game. Because here's beyond having a good partner, or the fortitude, the purpose, the commitment to be a small business owner in any regard. It's that choosing how we make a difference, how we manage the inner game and stay healthy mentally. And people say, well, what do you mean by the inner game? And I said, well, it's the inner game of being in the game of business or life and a career. And if you're in the game and you look at it as a game, meaning it can be fun. You're going to get injured playing a game or a sport. You're going to heal. You're going to take time to heal from practicing and learning. You're going to hire trainers and coaches. You're going to travel. There's a quote that says, if you don't travel around the world, you might as well, what's the point? You're missing out on so many opportunities, and the same with books. So the key is learning how to master that inner game, because along the way with Janice, I told you before, I blew up. My early 40s, I'd sold a small financial planning practice to a big company. Didn't go well. I lost my way emotionally. I lost all our money. We ended up going bankrupt. I'll never forget the shame, the guilt, the remorse, it was crippling. So crippling that your audience may or may not relate to this, but everything's energy, right? I've learned everything's energy. We have energy centers in the body called chakras. Yep. And when men, particularly in the lower energy centers, root and base chakra, sacral chakra, when we have fear and we fear we're losing control, or we have financial security at risk, or we're taking things personally and we need other people's approval in ways that are unhealthy, those energies get stuck down there. Well, I blew up my lower back. I thought it was because I was an athlete and a tennis guy. I ended up on a walker. I ended up going into surgery. It took me years to recover from that and get back to being able to ride 30 miles this morning on my bicycle before I had a breakfast, right? And here I am to get to hang out with cool people like you. So that's how we roll. We roll.
Yeah. Everything's energy. So interesting that you brought up chakras, because I meditate every morning and I just pick what I want to meditate. I have this cool app and it's just like, do you want to well-being, relaxation, confidence? You pick the topic. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 20. And today I picked the topic of chakras. So funny that you brought that up today.
Well, awareness of energy and what gives us energy, what takes energy. So, for example, did you know introverts lose energy when they're out networking in public? That's why they feel awkward.
Yes, I did know that. Yes.
Yeah. So Susan Cain wrote a great book called, I think it's called Power of Quiet or Quiet. Susan Cain, phenomenal book on the distinctions of introversion versus extroversion. Truth is, most of us are ambiverted and skewed to one end or the other, but it's being aware of that energy and breath, qi, as it's called in China, is transformational. Because think about it, exercise, number one form of learning.
Exercise.
Oxygenating the body and brain. So it's a very powerful thing for overcoming the daily stressors that create anxiety, that eventually wear us down if we're not taking care of ourselves. And then we implode, because we can't be unhealthy in the body unless it's of the mind. The mind and body are connected. In medicine today, allopathic medicine is just beginning to figure that out. I'm no doctor. I'm no rocket scientist. I read books. Yeah. And I practice on the body a lot, and so far the experiments are going well. But the inner game is the key to this, Julie.
100%. And Yes, yes, yes. And I've been reading a lot of too about neuroscience with Joe Dispenza. His latest book is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, but it's all about, and Bruce Lipton's another one. I've been listening to his interviews and people interviewing him, but it's so fascinating. And well, it's sad that all of this is coming to fruition and to light and to everyone's, it's more out there now. But this is obviously, it's always been this way. We just didn't know it was this way. And in the last 20 years, everyone's talking about it more. It's like, it all has to do with energy, and it all starts in your brain internally, and everyone thinks about it as just being healthy on the outside. And it's like, no, it's not. If it was that simple, then everyone would just be, all you'd have to do is exercise and everything in your life would be perfect. And that's not the case. It's not just
True.
about exercise. It's about the inner work too. I love the way the analogy of the inner game with, you have to train and practice and have a game and hire people to help you and relax and exercise and all those other things, because it's a constant, it's a daily practice, no matter what your practice is. But also one of the concepts in this podcast and in the book that I'm writing now is all of the topics that I talk about are just what you said in the beginning of this interview, this contentment that you can have in your life because you're doing the right thing, the purpose, and that contentment isn't coming out of magic. It's because you are doing something you love, because you're exercising your body every day, because you're meditating, doing something with your brain, good stuff. You're being grateful, you are being curious, you're talking to the right people, all those things.
Yeah, it is. So I have one further distinction on top of it. So those healthy habits allow the body and mind to perform biologically better. Bruce Lipton is the author of The Biology of Belief. He's a pioneer in the science of epigenetics, the science of everything that happens above the genetic or DNA level. Many people believe that we are predisposed genetically to the bodies or minds or whatever we have. And what Bruce Lipton and many pioneers in the quantum realm are saying is, well, if we're all energy, what that energy, when we break it down, is nothing. So our organic form, when we take good care of it, affected mostly by our thinking. So all the great sages in the East and anybody in the world, actually, they've come to a conclusion. Be still and know, right, that I am God, right? And if you look at that stillness, that practice, that meditation, that contemplation, that breath work, that awareness, there's one goal they're all striving for in the end. And I'm going to share the word with your audience because it's powerful. As soon as I figured this out, it correlated with another word I found in 12-step programs, which is acceptance and the serenity prayer. If you know it, right? It's all about accepting and having courage to accept the things we can't change and the courage to change the things we can. And that's basically about letting go of control. So the great masters, you look at all the world religions, they're all saying the same thing. That stillness is about learning to be detached from worldly things. So there are three major worldly things that freak humans out, consciously or not consciously, because as your audience may know, you probably know 90% of what we think is happening at an unconscious level. It's based on our early programming. So that biology of belief creates an observer effect awareness of the thinker. We're able to go beyond the thinking. We're able to figure out, hey, I can't change the world. I can't change poverty. It bothers me. I can't change anything that bothers me. And if it bothers me, well, how do I learn to accept it for what it is and be with it and maybe make a small difference? So you look at Gandhi, right? He wasn't starting wars to make an impact in changing a nation. He did it through the heart and minds of people over many, many years. And that's what we need in our society. We need those conscious leaders who are aware of energy, the energy that shows up before we walk into a room or get on a webinar. And we know the healthy habits that are all over the internet. Joe Dispenza and all this stuff's on YouTube, available on books. I ask people routinely in my coaching, what are you reading? What are you watching? And if they tell me they're not reading or watching anything or learning or growing, I challenge them to break through that level of ignorance.
Yeah.
Really,
There's
what
so
it is,
much out there. There's so much out there.
Sleepiness. Yeah, it's a sleepiness. And so once we make the shift to figure out, okay, I'm on this path to figure out how to be healthy and be with what is and accept and roll with the punches, even when I show up as a jerk, because the inner jerk's going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I'm aware of the inner jerk and can observe it and the impact it has on others, like I watched my father, you've probably seen this and felt this. The older we get, we know this from statistics, generally the happier we are. We're okay with things. Like you've been bankrupt, chances are you're going to be okay someday. Emotionally,
Yeah.
the wounds will heal. I've
Yeah.
been through it. If you've had a back surgery or any other kind of health trauma or ailment, we can heal. It all
Very
happens through
yeah.
mind and body and knowing that there's a purpose in all of it.
Do you teach these concepts? Have you taught these concepts to your sons, or along the way when you were parenting them? Number one, do they know all of this that you're talking about, and do they live it the same way? And number two, did you teach it to them, or did you just model it for them? And then when you'd have conversations, you kind of bring in, I'm just curious at how that worked.
Yeah, great question. So Chris and Alex both know these habits. Neither of them read at the level I'd love to see them read, but hey, I don't like, they're back to detachment, letting go. I don't have any control over that. I showed it, I lived it, they saw the consequences. I also created a lot of trauma in my home, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear I carried. I didn't know how to manage it. And when I quit drinking, it took me a few years to understand how to manage energy that was not medicated, self-medicated. So media, turning off media and any influence, drug or, right, I don't do well with drugs, prescriptions, alcohol. I love coffee. I drink black coffee in the morning before the crack of dawn and hop on the bicycle. But you know what I'm talking about. That's a huge aspect of the inner game, because Bruce Lipton tells us we are byproducts of our environment. And what's our primary environment? It's our body and mind. And then it's our home, and it's who we hang around, and it's what we read, where we go to school. And look what's happening with the programming from our environment. What do we have in America, the richest country in the world? Offsetting addiction, obesity, anxiety, depression. How is that possible? It's possible for one reason. We're focused on the wrong priority. We're focused on gross national product as the primary measure of success. Well, you go to Bhutan, I think it is, and the measure of success is gross national happiness. Now imagine I wake up every day. Does it make me happy? Does that negative thought when I'm talking badly to myself, right? Because we're always, I have a new thing. Hey, Cliff, this is me being an observer. Hey, Cliff, I think, hey, Cliff, was that a happy, positive, loving thought? Well, if not, observe it, we can change it. That's how we consciously, 10% of our mind, reprogram the subconscious mind on the fly, short of having hypnosis, psychotherapy, as I've been through, invaluable when you find the right therapist or hypnotherapist. And you have to, like I find a lot of guys, Julie, they're not willing to go get the help.
Yeah.
I just say that of guys. I coach men mostly who, I mentor and give time to men who are having that dark night of the soul that I went through. And people know my story who know me. So as a result, cool people like you show up. We talk about conscious stuff, but a lot of people who are lost find me. They're men. I can help men. I refer women to other people who have been through the journey and a little further ahead on the path of what I would call waking the heck up.
Waking the heck up. I love
Wake
that.
the heck up. Yeah, we read the sages and saints, mystics and poets of the world. It's called enlightenment. But every step of the way, we wake the heck up when we practice consciousness, energy, awareness. You can't get what you want unless you can feel it and be it.
For sure. That's what Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, is the one I just read. But he has a meditation at the end of it. He teaches you how to do it, but it's basically 4 weeks. It's every week you build one more piece onto it. At the end of the month, you're meditating for an hour a day, which is a lot. But I've been meditating for 3 years, so I'm like, I'm going to do this. So I did this in July, and the month of July to August, basically half and half. And he does what you're talking about, which is he's trying to reprogram your brain so that the negative things you say to yourself, and it's from the time you were 10 years old, you're still saying them. It's, you know, you're 50, it's 40, 50 years later, you're still saying the same things to yourselves. How do you undo that? And so he teaches you to, like, you're actually taking the, you're actually deprogramming your brain and taking those neural pathways and kind of undoing them. It's fascinating. So I practiced it for a month, and it works. You have to stop yourself. Like you said, wait a minute, what was that? Oh, that's my old person saying this. I'm going to say something new instead and create something different. Yeah. What is that book?
So I just pulled this off my bookshelf. I'm a book freak. This is Maxwell Maltz, 1961 Psychocybernetics. It was Maxwell Maltz is a pioneer in this. And basically his process was to catch yourself in that negative pattern of thinking, which is prevalent in all of us.
Right.
And his path was cancel, 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 cancel. And I actually hired a coach who helped me through some really tough times. And she was actually knew and worked with Maxwell Maltz. So these pioneers, Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, all these guys were the original prosperity mindset, life kind of coaches that I grew up with as a kid, you know, as a younger man when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And my wife says, nothing's wrong with you. You're just human and you keep thinking something's wrong with you. Will you be quiet about it?
Yeah. Yeah. You're just trying to figure out, you want to be happy. And instead of what's wrong with me, it's like, just trying to understand what's going on in your head so you can make changes.
Yeah, so I can feel okay in my own skin, right? That comes from the recovery world. We want to feel okay in our skin. Why wouldn't we feel okay in our skin? Well, because we don't believe we're enough. Yeah. Not okay. I'm not okay because I'm comparing myself. And I do this. You know, I was hanging out with a friend of mine. He makes 10 times as much money. We went to college together. We're best friends. And I love him. And it's hard for us not to compare financially and materially, but the truth is, what we know is, you look at a guy like Deepak Chopra, who I've been able to do a little work with, or Power of Now, right? Eckhart Tolle. Those people are magnetic. Joe Dispenza, right? He's basically a thought leader who's learned from all these early pioneers. I've never met Joe, but Harvey Mackay, he has worked with all the early like celebrity entrepreneurs who paralleled the early prosperity mindset motive, like Tony Robbins. Right?
Yep,
Tony Robbins, right? Prolific example of what it takes to manage the mindset and reprogram that 90% that's operating under the radar.
I had this epiphany a couple weeks ago, and because I've worked hard my whole life. I associate myself with people who work hard and are good people. And, you know, I'm sure you know lots of good people that don't have a lot of money. And then you probably know lots of people that have a lot of money that aren't good. And working hard, if it was really only about working hard, and I read a little bit about this in my book that's upcoming. If it was really only about working hard, every single janitor, busboy, person who's busting their ass, and any, you know, people down here in construction, I'm in the city in Chicago, and like running around and driving trucks and doing all this hard work, working hard. They're not millionaires, probably. Maybe some of them are, and they just have this job also. But if it was really only about that and not about mindset and energy and all these other things, everyone would just have a plethora of money, all right? Everyone would be super, super, super successful with not even worrying about bills ever. It's not about that. If it was about that, our world would be a completely different place. It's about those people believing whether they can have, like you just said, your friend that has 10 times more money, he's probably not working any harder than you're working. Maybe a little bit in the beginning. Well,
here's the thing. It's and then what is that measure of success? For a lot of people, it would be what we make, what we save. Yeah. I get that. That's important to me. Yeah. But if that's your primary measure and you could only be happy in the future when you have enough in the future, you know the consequence of that. Because Thomas J. Stanley wrote a book called The Millionaire Next Door. Yep. And what he says, if you look at truly wealthy people in America, They don't look like they have money.
Right.
They've been living in the same house for 30 years, generally married or together with the same person. Their life is stable. They buy old cars. They have simple values. And I think if you put a lot of credit in terms of credence into media for your education and your training and your coaching and celebrities on Instagram or whatever, and you want to be I read, I don't know if it's true, that a lot of young people want to make their money being YouTube stars. Well, let me tell you something. When I'm interviewing them for real jobs for my companies and my clients, that doesn't cut it as a skill set.
Right.
So there's a gap, right, between the reality, and I had to bridge that gap. I was painting houses or doing odd jobs, like you said, and I get out of college. I wanted to sell Ginsu knives. My dad said, "Wake up, kid, get a real job." And then I was on my way, doing work that I thought I was supposed to do, wondering why my soul was dying. And I'm like, there's got to be something I can do. And it's basically discovering this. If you could figure it out at some point in your life, that is the inherent blessing. Some of us get it early. You alluded to it earlier. Some of us, it took me, I'm 59, so it really took me for the last 10 years to break through into that next level of flow. My early 40s were literally, for me, an emotional hell on earth. And that's what St. Thomas writes about in one of the oldest books, the most prolific books in the world, which is called Dark Night of the Soul.
Okay.
There's a great translation of it too, if you want to get off Kindle.
Yeah, I haven't read that one. I've read a lot of the ones you're talking about, the Think and Grow Rich with Napoleon Hill. I just read that maybe in July. But yeah, it's amazing the words he's using in that book. All of the stuff that Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and newer aged, information we're getting now that was written. I don't know even know how old that book is, 30 years old or 40 years old.
Yeah,
or some of the examples.
But
I remember one particular story in that book, Think and Grow Rich, about a very young, inexperienced business guy who just had an idea and had a belief. And I forget what his name was, but he came into this business meeting and all the people, he thought, he's going to have to work his butt off to convince these people. And he's like, here's what I believe. And just the fact that he saw himself walking into that meeting, getting what he wanted and believed it so much, it's the energy that he had in that meeting. And all of those successful business people that he was pitching the idea to in that meeting were like, all right, kid. Yeah, right. And he didn't really even necessarily have a lot to back up his story. He just believed it so much and knew that he was going to have it. And part of this whole conversation that we're having today and the purpose of my podcast is for sure about showing people how they can have all of what we're talking about earlier in life, like you said, so they don't have to be 40, 50, 60. Why not have that at 25? I think some of it you can't have simply because it's experience and wisdom and growing up and having, trials and tribulations and stuff. But wouldn't it be awesome if you could figure out your purpose at 22 or 18 or 32 instead of 52? Think of all those years you could have so much more just love and success and great things in your life, Well,
and I know people like that. And you asked about my sons. They're that are an age where I don't know if they've discovered their purpose, but they built a skill set that allows them to stay employed, save a lot of money. And what they watch me do, my biggest mistake, Julie, was I overestimated my ability and underestimated the risk. And as a result, I was always spending ahead of myself and comparing myself as a less secure human and going out on credit and buying cars and things that I thought would make me happier and make me look better. Mm-hmm. And in the end, that caught up with me because when I lost it emotionally and I lost my clarity of how I would make a living and how I would feel good about that, I lost the income. And then I lost faith and I lost, you lose those things. And then we have that, what we call moment of clarity. We're like, oh my gosh, I don't think it can get much worse. I better come up with a new plan. Help me, God, is what I said. And then, slowly but surely, I changed my habits. Had to change the habits. And I had to get help. We all need help. Mm-hmm. And my wife, Janice, she was with me every step of the way. So if you're blessed to have that life partner, that spouse, cherish them, because somebody said, what's the secret the other day on a Facebook post? And I said, for me, it's unconditional love. We learn and we practice it, and we get over that egoic, it's all about me. I grew up a selfish guy, right? It's all about me, me, me.
Yeah.
Well, it comes we.
Yeah. We as a couple, we as a unit, and then we as a family, and then showing that, modeling that for your kids, and hoping that some of the good lessons that you've learned will work through them earlier, so that they can, you want them to have struggles so they can learn things, but it'd be nice if they could learn some of it sooner, right?
Well, that's the goal, because here, if your audience doesn't know this, the Jesuits have a saying, goes back centuries: give us your young men before they are 7, or give us your boys before they are 7, and we will make them men. So what we know from neuroscience is we're walking around in an alpha state, basically a sleep state. We have no ability to filter what gets downloaded into our unconscious minds. So that's the reason I grew up believing in Christianity, right? My parents were Christian. That's why I grew up liking tennis. My parents played tennis.
Yeah.
So that belief system that we're running around with, that personality we have, most of us aren't aware it was conditioned. It was programmed into us by our environment. And then we wake up and we're like, oh, is that the real me?
Yes, I want to end it. I want to end our conversation on that. And I want to say, because it's so powerful what you do to your kids when they're little and you don't even realize it. Like you said, under 7, Bruce Lipton's interview, that's the first time I heard it. You're the second talk to you saying that is the second time I've heard it, because I heard Bruce Lipton, it was probably last summer on an interview. I think it was with on Better Together podcast with Maria Menounos, but he was talking about that 7-year mark and all of the conditioning you do and that you don't have any control over. And then you like live the rest of your life like, why do I think this? Why do I feel that? Oh, it came back from then.
Yeah.
Not to blame your parents, but just to know, like, there's so much power in what you do and say with your kids and what you feel and all that energy when you're raising them. It's so, so important. And to be able to go back and look at that as an adult and say, oh, these are those things, I can learn more about it now so that I don't keep repeating these same old habits, or undo the thoughts that are keeping you stuck, or from getting from your purpose, or clearing out what you need to clear out so that you can find the right person or the right job or your whatever it is. But there's so much power in that. So I just want people to learn more about it if you don't. And if you're a parent of young kids, really, really learn more about it. There's also all kinds of great parenting books, but that, especially that concept of what you're leaking into their little minds and how, what is it, elastic and impressionable they are, right?
Exactly. So Julie, I want to leave you with this thought. What you're doing is super important, because think about it right now as we're recording this. Millions of single parents are home with kids at school. A lot of them can't get to their normal jobs, resume a normal way of life. The stress and anxiety that goes with that demands a level of awareness for a toolkit that allows us to be with our children, because that's all they want. They just want us to be with them. And that time goes by so fast. It's just amazing. And the more we can be with them and share our values and unconditional love, they're going to feel it, and then they're going to carry it.
They're going to feel it. They're going to carry it. They're going to have better energy around it, and they're not going to know why. They just are. And then you get to see them blossom earlier and at a faster rate, because you have so much power. So yeah, thank you.
Great to hang out with you again, Julie. Always fun. Thank you for inviting me back.
Thank you. I loved all the references, and I'm going to make references to that in the notes too, because there's so many awesome books. Most of them that you mentioned I read, and they're so powerful, and there's so much to learn, and there's so much great experience. There's so many great experiences to have. You just have to want them.
Well, readers are leaders, and if you can't travel, read a book. You're traveling in a way. You're traveling in another realm of someone's domain. So I
like that. Readers are leaders. Excellent.
Yeah, that's not my line. I should give them credit, but I don't know how.
But it's a great line, because even if your kids can't read, you can read and teach them, or you can encourage them to be reading so that they can learn all these great lessons too earlier. Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you, Julie. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you love this content, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you found us on. You can get all my social media links in the description below. Help us keep the momentum going so that every person can live their lives happily, doing work they love.